Hey guys, it's Katt Dee, and I'm here with another Top 5 Friday. This Top 5 Friday was actually recommended to me by one of you guys, so thanks for the recommendation. So here I go. So today's Top 5 Friday is going to be my top 5 favorite books, but I'm going to change it a little bit and do my top 5 favorite books that I've read so far this year. So it's about 40 books. And yeah, so I just kind of want to do the top 5 that are like most notably on my mind right now. And maybe eventually, maybe at the beginning of the year, I'll do like my top 5 favorite books of all time so far. But I'm just going to stick with my top 5 for this year. My honorable mentions that I have this week are actually going to be the 2 graphic novels series that I started that I'm actually really enjoying. And remember, these are just things that I've read this year. So if I don't mention it, it's not because I haven't read it or it's not one of my favorites. It's just because I haven't read it this year. So I didn't put the graphic novels as actually a part of my top 5. Those are all like standalone, well, not standalone books. They're all books or books in a series. And so let's just get right into it because I'm mumbling. Okay, so my first honorable mention that's actually a graphic novel is the Giant Days series. And I actually really enjoy this. It's not my typical type of read. It's really kind of like more of a contemporary graphic novel. It follows like 3 college students that are just kind of living their everyday college life, but they're all really different. So one's kind of like dark and twisty, like goth kind of ish. One's like got some kind of like anxiety, and she feels like if she didn't have her 2 friends, one of the 3, that she'd have no friends at all. And then the other one's just kind of, ordinary, just, your average, everyday college student, I guess you would say, that doesn't really fit in any bubble, in my opinion. So they're all really different, but all of their differences make them like really good friends. And I don't know. I don't know whether it's because it just the friendship aspect of it that I really enjoy, because like I said, it's not really my type of read, but I've read the first 3. I've given the first 3 volumes like 5 stars. I think they're funny. I love reading them. They're really quick reads. You can read like one in like 25 minutes. So yeah, that is my first honorable mention. My second one is, I've only read the first one, but oh my goodness, let me tell you how much I love this graphic novel so far. It is called I Hate Fairyland. So this is not, like, from the cover to me, even though it looks like a little bit of a vulgar cover, it's so cartoony and so bright that I just had to pick it up. I was like, oh my gosh, this looks like it's right up my alley. And it was so good. Like, I feel like it's one of those that you either love or you hate. And so it follows a young girl who gets taken into fairyland, and her job is to complete this quest in order to get out of fairyland. And it's said to take, they say it's supposed to take like 2 days, and it has taken her like 17 or 20 years. I can't remember. It's a ridiculous amount of years. I think it's like 20. And so much so that the people of fairyland are like, oh my gosh, we got to get this girl out of here. She's been here so long. Because when you get brought into fairyland, you can't harm the child at the time that enters into fairyland. So she has aged like 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 mentally, but not physically. So she still looks like a 12-year-old girl. Yet she's like killing people and bashing people's head and speaking in profanities. And when I said it's not for children, it's really not for children. And I loved it. I loved every bit of it. I could not stop laughing. I was drinking something at one point and I ended up spitting it out. I laughed so hard. So to me, it was really great. Vulgar, but great. Loved it. All right, so getting into my top 5, I'm going to start with number 5 and then go to number 1. And I just went to my Goodreads and kind of pulled the top 5 that I felt like that I wanted to talk about, that I felt like that have been my top 5 this year. And so, yeah, so starting at number 5, I want to talk about Heartless, which is by Marissa Meyer. I loved this book. I gave it 4.5 stars. It is a retelling of The Queen of Hearts from Alice in Wonderland. And the story really follows the Queen of Hearts per se. It really follows her, the main character, and it kind of tells you her story and where she started at and how it progressed and why she became the way she became. And I've never felt so much empathy for a villain before. Like, well, she's a villain now. But I mean, I don't know. If I were in her position, I might, feel kind of the same way that she felt. Um, but there is a love story, and there is, funny parts and sad parts and dramatic parts, and I really can't go into like depth about it. But I mean, they're literally, the premise is, how the Queen of Hearts became the Queen of Hearts, and it follows her story. And if you like retellings, and if you like fairy tale retellings, or whatever, then you'll really enjoy this. I gave it 4.5 stars, and the ending shattered me. Okay, coming in at number 4. Okay, had you asked me after reading the first book in this series if I thought the second book would ever be in the top 5 video, the answer would be no. So this book has been severely overhyped on BookTube, and so this is my opinion. Don't hate me for my opinion if you've read these books, but my number 4 is Legendary by Stephanie Garber. Also gave it 4.5. It is the second in the series, so I really can't tell you much about it. So I will give you the premise of how the book's laid out in the first book. So the first book follows a girl named Scarlet, and her mother is missing. Her and her sister Tella, and her mother is missing, and they don't know where their mother is. And she is supposed to be wed or like married off to someone that she's never met before. Sounds really interesting so far. No, not really. Let me get to it. So the magical aspect of it, and I started reading this because it said if you like the Night Circus, you would like this book. I think they're completely different books. I mean, I don't see, I mean, maybe, but I don't really see it. Well, I mean, I guess the premise, but if you like the Night Circus, it doesn't mean you're going to like Caraval. So Caraval is the book I'm talking about. So Caraval is the first book. I gave Caraval 3.5 stars, but let me get back into what the premise of it. So Caraval follows Scarlet, and Caraval is this place where this gentleman named Legend hosts this game, per se. And this game lasts 5 nights, and whomever wins this game gets a wish at the end of the first book. They get a wish. So this entire book is basically following Scarlet playing this game of Caraval. And I really can't give you any more details than that. There's magic in it. There's heartache in it. There's deception. The premise of the book is amazing. I loved the premise of the book. I did not love our main characters. I didn't. I think that was the biggest downfall for me in Caraval, as I couldn't connect with Scarlet as a main character. I didn't empathize with her. I felt like I wanted to like skip through some parts. But we're talking about top 5. Okay, so on to the second book. The second book was amazing. Amazing. It follows someone else's perspective, and it follows a different Caraval. And I loved everything about this book. I loved the premise of this book. I loved the magic in this book. I loved, like, I didn't want to stop reading it. Like, that's how good it was. The growth of, I feel like, of the author's words from book 1 to the second book. Yeah, I mean, it was just so good. I loved it. I can't wait to see where Stephanie's writing goes from here. I look forward into reading Finale, which is the last book in the series. But, oh my gosh, guys. After Legendary ended, I was like, oh my gosh, I have such a book hangover. I had such a book hangover. So if you've read Caraval and you don't really love it, please give Legendary a try. It's amazing. It's really worth picking up. All right, number 3 on my list is also a part of a series, and this is the last book in the series. It breaks my heart that it was the last book in the series, but it's another Marissa Meyer book. So I read Winter by Marissa Meyer, and this is part of the Luna Chronicle series. I guess you guys can see I like fairy tale retellings and fantasy. So this one actually follows a cast of characters, but how the Lunar Chronicles is set up, I can't really tell you what happens in this book because it's the last book in the series, but I can give you a grand scheme of things about the Lunar Chronicles. So each book follows like a separate character. So like the first book is called Cinder, so obviously you meet Cinder in that book, which is a very loosely based on Cinderella. And then you have Scarlet, which is Red Riding Hood. I think then Cress, which is Rapunzel, and then Winter, which is Snow White. So these are all separate, I guess, fairy tale retellings, but they're all connected. And that's all I can really say. Like they're all against this one villain named Queen Lavanna, who, to be honest, is probably one of the most epic villains, not in an adult fantasy, because this is not adult, but like in a YA fantasy, because this is a YA book. And I loved her as a villain. I actually read a prequel called Fairest that kind of gives the backstory of Queen Lavanna, and she's just always been evil and terrible, and I have no sympathy for her whatsoever, but I love her as a villain. Like, I loved reading about her. I wanted to know what she was going to do next, and I loved the magic system in this book, and I loved like the imagery and the world building, and I felt like I was in this book when I was reading it. So yeah, that's definitely on my list. All right, coming in at number 2, and to be honest, I don't know why this book is on this list. Like, I loved this book, and I did give it 5 stars, so I rate my books right after I read them. But going back to it, this one probably would have been lower on the list, even though I did give it 5 stars, and I gave Winter 5 stars too. But I think I almost like Legendary better than this book, and I only gave Legendary 4.5 stars. But let's get right into it. So number 2 is They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. So this book kind of shattered me. Maybe that's why I gave it 5 stars. Like, so in this world, the way that you die is you find out you're going to die 24 hours-ish, up to 24 hours before you die. You get a call from this place called Deathcast, and they say, by the way, you're going to die today. Yeah, I think that's how it is. But you don't know at what time you're going to die. You just know that you're going to die. And so there's this app that is for all these people that are going to die, or that want to support people or be there for people that are going to die. And so your 2 main characters actually meet on this app, Mateo, and I can't remember the other guy's name. So they meet on this app because it's both of their last days, and it kind of follows their story. It follows how they find out. It follows them. It's almost like this book takes place all over the course of a day, and I read this book in like a day. So I couldn't put it down. I loved it. The ending was shattering. It doesn't end the way that you think it's going to end. It just kind of, it doesn't end the way I thought it was going to end. But when I finished it, I was like, oh man, I wanted it to work out. I wanted it to work out. I wanted it to work out. And I'm not saying it did or didn't, but I can tell you the entire book, I wanted it to work out. And so, yeah, so that was my number 2. All right, coming in at number 1, by a landslide, this is my number 1 book. It is an epic fantasy book, or a high fantasy book. It is the first book in a series, and I can't believe it took me so long to pick this up. But that is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. And I thought this book was like just something that was it was going to be super overhyped. I thought that people were just talking about, how like people just get like on the bandwagon of books. Like they feel like, okay, everybody loves it, so I have to love it. I really felt like this was going to be one of those books, but it wasn't. This is a chunker of a book. I feel like it was like over 800 pages. And there were definitely super slow points in the book, but it was so good. It was so good. So it follows Quoth, who he's our main character, but the side characters are amazing too. And Quoth wants to learn how to be a wizard, or he wants to learn how to call the wind, or know. In order to call the wind or whatever, you have to know the name of the wind, and that's why the book is what it is. And how he ends up figuring out that's what he wants to do is another part. But he goes to this university, and he just has to deal with the trials and tribulations of that. There is a love story, there is magic, there is action, there is poverty, there is desperation, there is like, is he gonna make it? Are they gonna make it? You know, there's a backstory of his family. Like, it is just, I feel like I read 17 lifetimes in one book. It was that good. The world building, it was really not even the story. The story was great, but it was the world building. You felt like you knew the characters. You felt like you could be there. Even the side characters were ones that you felt like you knew, like you felt something for them, even if you only knew them for like 27 pages. It was that good of a book. His writing is so like narratively pleasing, like you just want to keep reading it. And I feel like even when something bad is happening, it's written in such a melodic way that it doesn't seem so bad. I don't know, it's really hard to describe. So yeah, so that's my top 5 favorite books that I've read so far in 2018. Let me know some of the things that you love that you've read. It doesn't have to be this year, it can be in general. Most people don't read as much as I do. I know there's a lot of people that read a ton more than I do, but on average, people don't read, you know, over 100 books a year. So, yeah, I'm Katt Dee, guys. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up, comment down below, and subscribe. Bye!